everybody said, "Oh, you're insider trading." I was like, "I'm outsider trading." Like, "Good. I love the guy. He's amazing." So
No, no, no. I wish my advisors don't see this podcast.
I met him, and I was like, "Oh, this is my guy."
So it was basically an AI NFT generator tool that we were just vibe coding, right?
Right?
So as a
And
Stripe user, I'm not going to think about what Privy Wallet is, right? So
of course, Ethereum is perfect, right? Everything is perfect about Ethereum. So yeah.
by not being associated in any terms with Polygon, it actually, I mean,
So yeah, welcome to the third episode of the Hadron podcast. Today we are delighted to host Prabal Banerjee, the co-founder of Avail. Avail is building a horizontally scalable network of blockchains that provides inbuilt interoperability for applications as well as shared security and a modular DLR. So, Prabal, welcome to the show.
thanks a lot, Chenoda.
Great.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so we've known each other for what now, about 3 years, and it's a pleasure to host you. So we're going to talk about your journey, right? So in this podcast, we talk about your journey as a founder, and even before that. So tell us about how you got started. What's your background? What are the things sort of things you did before you came into crypto or Web3, whichever you prefer? And how did you fall into this blockchain technology and Web3?
Yeah, so I think I was in cryptography space for a very, very long time
Right.
before coming into the crypto space. So yeah, I mean, I used to look from the outside and think like, oh, they are not the OG crypto people. We are the OG crypto people because we are doing cryptography. And
Right.
then finally. When I looked into the space, it was fascinating. Like I mean, so largely speaking, had a very academic kind of a background. Uh, went into cryptography during my bachelor's, thanks to a professor who was doing some research, and I used to stay after class and just sit with him and do random things and all sorts of studies on books which I barely understood at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I quickly realized that my maths is not strong enough, so I needed much more theoretical rigor. So and in masters, I went for more theoretical computer science knowledge in CMI, in Chennai Mathematical Institute in Chennai. There I realized, like, that there is a lot of different fields in which I can delve into. I had a lot of different topics that I was able to dip my feet in, and cryptography, stood out as some kind of my interest resides in that.
Okay.
um, I actually did some, so-called AI. I mean, it was all machine learning or
Mm-hmm.
glorified statistics. I did an internship at Oracle
Yeah.
when I did a lot of things for their sales team to optimize sales, and did a bunch of financial analytics at that time.
Okay.
um, After that, I was planning to join Oracle when I got a chance to do my PhD in cryptography and security at Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, and that's when I went into research. Um, I mean, even a year in, I knew that I wanted to do something much more impactful than just sit and write papers. So
Mm-hmm.
um, in in the 4 years that I did research, I had, I think, 3 or 4 internships that I did in various different places, startups, IBM research, etc., etc. So um, I kind of had a knack for doing things which can impact real people and some real users and so on. By the end of those 4 years, I got a bit bored writing papers, so I thought now is my time to finally live this and just go for the industry
Okay,
and go on.
so your background is computer science, cryptography. You joined a PhD program in cryptography. Right, right,
Yeah,
right. And what was your research about? What was the big title of your seminal
it
thesis?
was it couldn't be seminal, but but it was around fairness of blockchain algorithms. So
Oh, okay.
essentially, we wanted to use blockchains for establishing fairness in real world transactions. So many different parts, but one of the major things is you cannot do two party fair exchange. Like you cannot offer me a service and I cannot pay you for it in a fair manner, because if any one of us are malicious, then we
Yeah.
can back off from that trade. So you need a trusted third party, and how blockchains were replacing all trusted third parties at that point in
Well,
time.
we still
And so
sometimes need, yeah, we still need sometimes need Kobe to resolve disputes and serve as the escrow between traders on Twitter. But so you think it's possible to do a peer to protocol to peer type of interaction, and then create a fair two party market through a blockchain or a smart contract?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think if you look at like how I look at blockchains is that it is a way to scale trust, right? Like how multi-party systems, even two-party systems, are very hard to orchestrate in terms of trust,
Yeah.
because as soon as you in you if it all works out when it's crash fault tolerant, right? I mean, in consensus designs and such, you have two classes of faults. One is crash fault and another is Byzantine fault. So crash fault says that even if one of us or one of the parties just stops working, they
Mhm.
just have a outage, just like yesterday internet had.
Mhm.
How does the protocol respond to that?
Yeah.
That part is easy. You can adjust to some part of, like, even majority crash fault is somehow
Right.
sustainable. But
Mhm.
when it comes to Byzantine faults, even most elaborate protocols go haywire, and then
Yeah.
they
So
suffer.
you're a
So
game theory guy. Did you do game theory?
I attended game theory classes,
Mm.
and
Yeah. What was your grade? Okay,
few.
I should ask you that, but yeah. Right.
Yeah, a few days back, I met my game theory teacher in an
Yeah.
airport. He was going for a game theory conference, and he
Uh-huh.
was like, "Oh, you're now doing all this. You used to sit on the back of the class and ask
Yeah.
me stupid questions."
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's okay. So did you explain to him the game theory of sitting at the back of the class and asking stupid questions when everyone else is to distract everyone else? Anyways,
No, no.
yeah, that joke aside. So yeah, okay. So you did cryptography, you did fairness. So there is a whole bunch of auction theory, and I sometimes attempt to read Tarun's papers and see what's going on with MEV and MCP and all these fairness algorithms. So one of the so one of the key problems that we see today in Ethereum is this incentive alignment between rollups and the DA and the settlement layer, right? So, like, how do you know that Base or Arbitrum or Starknet have their incentives aligned with Ethereum? That sort of thing. So we'll come back to that. I think that's a very interesting problem. So you were a blockchain technology guy, not a crypto guy.
Yeah, if crypto is not cryptography, then
Right.
yes.
It's just been going downhill, right? Crypto, computer science, math, then
Or
cryptography.
uphill.
Oh,
It's all about
yeah,
perspectives.
that's right. So it depends on the hill. So blockchain, then crypto. Okay, okay, okay. That sounds like a very aligned journey, just becoming more and more, I think, productive and specific. So did you finish your PhD or what happened there?
No, I actually dropped off. I first converted and tried to do it remote while
Yeah.
working at Polygon, and then quickly realized that although my work is complete, I can just submit my thesis, but didn't feel worth it, so I dropped off.
Uh, okay. Is Is that because of the professor who asked you, you're asking stupid questions, or are these two things connected?
No, no, no. I wish my advisors don't see this podcast.
Right, right, right.
But but yeah, I think there is a I think there is a lot of bureaucracy that is involved
Yeah,
in academics,
that's right.
and it felt very limiting to
Yeah,
me, to be honest. And
yeah.
that is nothing to do
I
with
understand. I mean,
just academics
yeah.
in general.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there is a process to it, right? So I've been reading this
Yes.
Genentech book, and how an academia differs from university, sorry, from industry, and now we are seeing that in AI. And obviously crypto, on one hand you have a very process oriented, peer review type of a culture that Cardano tried to implement, by the way, right?
Mhm.
Funny enough, and some of the biggest, I'm not supposed to name the Ethereum researchers who were at Cardano, because they are supposed to be Ethereum aligned. You were not one of them, just to be clear. So, but yeah, so Cardano tried to create this academic peer review type of culture, and it didn't really work out, because they ended up with a product that didn't work. And whereas academia has to be rigorous and peer review driven, and citations oriented, and obviously there is a social dimension to it, and not and my dad would have wanted me to do it, but I wasn't smart enough. So at least that's not the case with you. So how did you end up with Polygon?
So yeah, I think funnily enough, like when I was looking at different places where I could make some impact, uh, Polygon Matic at that point in time was almost the only scaling solution on Ethereum or in the space that was out there.
What
I
was the
mean,
token
Lightning
price when
Network.
you joined Polygon?
I think it was 0.02
Oh, okay, okay. So you're
or
one of the
something.
okay. You were early. Very nice.
Yeah,
Okay, so we
yeah.
can't blame you
So
for the price going down. That's good, right? Okay. So how did you end up at Polygon, and what were you doing there? Right.
yeah, so yeah, I think I was scrolling through and seeing like what are the open positions out there, and funnily enough, I couldn't find something which suits me very well. I could see a business manager role out there, and I thought like, okay, let me just apply because there is no other good role
Yeah.
in Polygon that I could
Yeah.
find.
Yeah.
Um,
You were not looking to get
and
married. Sometimes, like academicians get a job when they're looking to get married, especially Indian guys.
See, you are now pulling me into
Just yes
the
or no. This is a you can plead the fifth also.
no, no, no. I was not looking to get married back then,
Right, right. So you end up at Polygon, and
but
they have a business manager
yes.
role. Obviously, you're not a business guy at that time. You're more of a researcher. So what were you doing at Polygon?
So so basically, when the HR called, they told me like, you are clearly not fit for the business manager role.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, you called me to inform that maybe. But then she said like, but there's a researcher role. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
So
So they
then
gave you the right job. They didn't just give you the job because we were hiring so many people at the time. Right. Okay, that's
no,
good.
it was before that.
He wasn't
It was before
trespassers
that.
will be recruited. Okay. Right.
I think when
Okay.
I joined, there were I think 25,
Yeah.
30 people,
Yeah.
maybe a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah,
Wow.
the,
Really, really.
the scale up didn't happen back then.
Mm.
And
Okay.
I think it was great. I think I joined as a researcher. Ultimately, like I think one of my interview questions by Anurag was around data availability and such, and I was
Anurag interviewed.
already had a paper in data retrievability and proofs of retrievability and fairness in that and so on and
So
privacy around that.
Anurag is Anurag Arjun, ex co-founder of Polygon, and now you're co-founder. So
Yes,
this is
yes.
like love at first sight, except it's for. So I met him and I was like, "Oh, this is my guy." So,
I
okay,
wouldn't
so,
give you that sound bite, but
yeah, keep going, keep going. Right, so, okay, and then what happened?
and and yeah, and then we worked on various different things within Polygon. I think at that point in time we were seeing all the kinds of problems that it comes when you scale up solutions, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
very easy for anyone to come up and design a new blockchain and call it cheap and fast and whatnot. but it's a different game when you see actual user traction coming in, and
Yeah.
thousands and millions of transactions just hitting your
So,
chain day in day out. So it became quite a fascinating journey, really. Like we could like I could firsthand see like the problems and the issues that you face when scale hits you, and how the design was robust enough to handle it, and the the smallest tweaks and things, how they impacted real people. And you could really see that in a microcosm, right? Like you could
yeah,
see that how what will happen if users get fast and cheap Ethereum style transactions with Ethereum tooling,
yeah.
and what kind of huge amounts of use cases will it unlock, and huge amounts of spam that it will unlock,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
how
yeah.
do you
So,
differentiate?
so at that time, were you was is it Polygon doing Plasma? Because I know they started with Plasma and then went on to do the POS, the Cosmos chain. What was
Yeah,
going
so
on?
I
Yeah.
think yeah, I think when I joined, I think there was dual security.
Mhm.
So there was a Plasma security model, and then there was a POS security model.
Yeah.
I actually worked some time with the Plasma contracts as well,
Hmm.
very adjacently, although. But I could see that the engineers and every one of us were struggling to fit in the business logic into the Plasma exit contracts. And already by that time we could see that um, the the Plasma scaling solution was hugely limited by the data availability problem.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
was one of the main concerns why Plasma couldn't scale up to its limit. There were other problems as well, like I wouldn't say just the DA, but how account based modeling or account based models, along with the DA challenges, completely capitulated the Plasma scaling. And we
Right.
could clearly see people more and more and more shifting towards the POS chain
Right.
and the POS
That's
security,
right.
because of the ease of utility,
That's
because
the
of
time when the EVM on Cosmos Meta started, right? And Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, uh, what is that? Crypto.com, and everyone was started kind of looking at EVM on Tendermint.
yeah, yeah.
Right, right, right. So, okay, so that's fascinating. And is this the time when Vitalik's DA paper came out, or
Yeah, I
how
think it
or with data
came
availability
up.
sampling?
Yes, I think Vitalik's paper came up just before I joined. I think a year or a few months back.
Okay.
That's when Vitalik's paper came up,
Yeah.
and there were some very good work done all around. And it completely struck me that I was purely thinking about retrievability part, but once we saw like the Plasma and how the verifiability using ZK and such would be implemented, but how DA was one of the major critical bottlenecks that we are going to come up, it kind of started to all click together. Like if you
Right.
read very early Polygon paper, I mean it was called Matic white paper back then.
Uh-huh.
Um, in late 2020, you could see that there was a design where there was a single Heimdall chain and multiple Bohr chains out on top of it. Like it
What is
was
Heimdall? What is Bohr for our listeners?
so
Yeah.
Bohr is the execution engine, so to say. Like when you just a while back you alluded to EVM on
Yeah.
Cosmos.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to avoid EVM on Cosmos, the EVM chain runs as the execution engine in
Mhm.
a X style chain called Bohr,
Right.
and the Cosmos chain is the Heimdall chain, which is the consensus layer behind, right?
Right.
So they are decoupled. Like think of it like a beacon chain and the execution client. Like how the consensus client and execution client are right now
Yeah. So
decoupled.
Heimdall is the beacon chain equivalent. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Got it.
and Bohr is the execution client equivalent.
Execution client equivalent. Okay, amazing. So Polygon's product was, POS chain. Kind of it had a linear or so, and then, it's like then people just started coming, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I distinctly remember interviewing Sandeep for the Binance event, right? And then I was like, okay, this guy has something going on, and he's got a lot of energy, so I should just buy his token. I think I tweeted that, and I got into a lot of trouble for that because I was not supposed to be a Binance employee and tweet that I'm buying tokens. Like, somebody said, "Oh, you're insider trading." I was like, "I'm outsider trading." I'm like, "Oh, I love the guy; he's amazing." So, and I'm tweeting about it. So, oh god. Anyways, so yeah, so
No,
I,
I
I
think
I think 6 months later the DeFi summer started and people just started coming. So how was that experience?
I think it was amazing. Like I think Polygon had one of the best teams back then, and you would already see like even today there is a talk that every third person or fourth person you meet in crypto is a former Polygon person,
That's right.
and
Either
that
it's
is
former consensus or former Polygon. Right. At least in the
you
Ethereum.
mean.
Yeah, I'm both. So yeah. So, double man.
No,
Whatever you call it. Yeah.
no,
Right.
no, yeah, I think that speaks of the talent of the team that
Definitely.
they could assemble, right? That they could basically attract. But I would say like the design was way ahead of its time. As I said, like Ethereum right now, the design that it has, Polygon had it, 4 years before that, or something,
Yeah.
right? 3 to 4 years before that. The founding team and such were amazing. I mean, Sandeep, of course,
Yeah.
he is a master of
Legend.
what
Legend.
he's.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so charismatic and he does his work so well.
Yeah. No.
JD, the engineering team behind,
Yeah.
he's just amazing. I mean, he. I'm so sad that
Yeah. You say.
he is right now.
I mean, you say
He's
that,
right.
but I also remember people giving Polygon a lot of shit, right, on Twitter. So there was Mihailo had just joined, and then I think all the Ethereum OGs were shouting at Polygon. This is before all the, Sasal and everyone else, Bankless guys and whoever else started supporting Polygon, John Lilich and so on. But there was a lot of trolling going on Twitter about Polygon's technology. I mean, were you watching that? Were you involved in that?
Yeah, so I think we used to get a lot of slack. Right? I mean, let's be honest, like because we were in the frontier of technology,
Yeah.
people, of course, there are two kinds of people. One who didn't understand the complexity of what
That's
it need to be
right. Yeah.
built,
Yeah.
and that Rome is not built in a day.
Yeah.
And although, like, you cannot anticipate all the problems, and then as startups, you
Yeah.
basically learn on the fly and then
Right.
fix
I
things,
mean,
and things
of
burn and
course,
crash.
Ethereum is perfect, right? Everything is perfect about Ethereum. So yeah, I'm joking. Right.
No,
Right.
I think Yeah, I think Ethereum is. I mean, okay, let's not go to the Ethereum story right now, but I think
Right.
we had a lot of things to learn from Ethereum, and that's why it was a guiding light, right? I mean, let's not
Definitely.
kid ourselves.
Yeah.
It showed like what exactly the standards were, and we
That's
got a trolling a lot because the standards were set so high by Ethereum, right? And all credit to them.
yeah.
At the same time, as I was mentioning, there are two kinds of people: one who couldn't understand the complexity, and the second who were, of course, couldn't cope
Back,
up with it, right?
oh, right. And there
Uh,
was back bias and whatnot, right? So there was also
yeah,
there was like, who
and
are
if
these
you see,
four guys from India? Whatever, Asian guys. That
exactly.
there was a lot of that. I
I
remember.
mean,
I was in the UK
yeah,
with
I mean,
Huawei, so I had a different perspective. Right.
yeah, I think again a lot of different cultural, social, economic incentives
Yeah,
at play there.
that's right.
But long story short, I don't think any of that bothered
Didn't
us
matter in the
a
end.
lot.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, because we could see that the numbers don't lie. I mean, people on Twitter, they can talk about it all
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
We actually spent a lot of time. I remember like Anurag and JD personally going to Telegram chats and investigating issues and going customer support,
yeah.
and everyone did that, to be honest. Like there was no culture where there was a different team that only does that and so on. So we were there in the trenches to see that real people are using it, and the technology is making real impact, and we
Right.
are onboarding more people by the day, and that we are touching more lives than
Yeah,
many other infrastructure can. And
definitely.
us being at the forefront, we were very happy that we were getting the slack,
Yeah.
because
So
at that point in time no one else could cope up with that kind of a traction.
Yeah, and Ethereum desperately needed to be scaled, right? I think Binance Smart Chain was like getting adoption and starting to really compete with Ethereum. The Avalanche had come in. There was a whole bunch of these EVM based L1s that were starting to come in, and so on and so forth. And Polygon was probably the most. Sandeep is still a huge believer in Ethereum, right? I think he's. I've been in Ethereum 10 years, but every time I talk to Sandeep and Anurag, I mean, they're very deeply attached to Ethereum. So were you in Anurag's group, as in, and how did this your love affair with data availability start?
No, I think I worked very closely with JD and Anurag both. After joining, of course, there was this POS chain, which was the center of attraction
Yes,
across the entire org. But at
unbelievable.
the same time, we were working hard um, on many different things. One being, how are we imagining the world going forward? We
Right.
could already see that roll-ups were the way to scale.
Yes.
There was this roll-up centric vision put out by Vitalik,
Yes.
and even without that, you could really see that a single chain, what the limits of them are. We
Right.
were running a chain, we could not proceed after a limit of physical barriers, right? So there is always a physics at play.
Right.
Technology can help
Except
you
when
so
it's
much.
Anatoly's chain, or some of these big box roll ups, then they pre-confirm everything. Anyway, so
No, I
okay,
think
so
again,
right. So Ethereum
again,
scaling has been a moving target, and then so there was a time when everyone was talking about ETH 2.0 and sharding. I remember that very vividly, and Ilya had implemented sharding that didn't really work at the time. Now it does. And then there was Plasma, there is the POS chain, and then some sort of and then Vitalik comes around and says, okay, look, sharding is not really going to work. We have to do this roll-up centric roadmap, right? This is the direction we're going to go in, right? So in this sort of a fast-moving space, which is okay, Ethereum scaling, and we're going to figure out how to scale this thing for everyone. And then you say, okay, right, so this is the new direction, and you can't solve roll-ups without data availability. Is that what happened? Hello.
yeah, I think, yeah, I kind of got you. Um, so yeah, I think we realize that a single chain. I mean, even today, that is a very strong conviction, right? I mean, you mentioned you alluded to Solana, and Solana is an amazing feat of engineering. What you can essentially do at scale. I think that is purely amazing.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think they are trying to push to the limits of what a single chain can do,
Right.
and hats off to them for doing that. Like, they are so strongly convinced that it makes us question our thesis, right? And that is always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the
Julian Murphy.
other hand, yeah. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, our thesis has always been that a single chain cannot solve for the global level of blockchain transactions that we are looking for.
Yeah.
And if all the people in the world start using blockchains at a time, no particular blockchain, irrespective of its tech today, will be able to scale up to its demands.
Right.
And that's why we were thinking of, even back at 2020, we were doing zk rollup research. I think Arbitrum, what is it, was in their early phase. Back then they were probably the um, only people who had figured out how to design a general purpose rollup.
Yeah.
There were zk rollups of sorts, but they were very specific to payments.
Yeah.
But the general purpose zk rollup was still something that was being debated and thought
Yeah.
about hard.
Darknet were kind of ahead at that time. Uh, you
Absolutely,
know,
absolutely.
right. They were the most
Yeah, so
exciting
I think,
roll up. Yeah.
yeah, Starknet was, and Ellie and the team were
Head
very,
starting.
very,
Right.
yeah, very, very good head start in terms of the ZK research part. So they were, of course, working on that. But even within Polygon, we were convinced that that ZK is going to be the ultimate way to scale this multi-chain world.
Yeah.
And in that kind of a world, DA will be the bottleneck that we need to
Right.
optimize for. And that's where, Avail, without the name being fixed back that in at that point in time, we started a data availability project within Polygon. It was me and Anurag to start with.
Right.
Anurag has this very high conviction that
Yeah.
we need to, even within Polygon there are hundreds of other things that are happening, but we need to work on this problem. So we
Mhm.
started working on that. We did a draft design. We started writing POCs. Soon the POCs, like very bare bone thing, worked. So we were like, okay, now this thing has some legs. So we invited two more engineers who were part time involved in Avail,
Right.
and they started contributing. And slowly we built a team around
So
it,
this is
and
the
we could see that.
Skunkworks. This is your Skunkworks project inside Polygon. So you're working on data availability sampling, and you're working on ZK as a cryptographer. So that's a fantastic journey, right? I mean, kind of doing cutting edge work in this space. I mean, that's as cutting edge as it gets at the time, and probably even now. So right, and
But I was very fortunate to have, I mean, soon after, I think, like, a lot of talented folks joined Polygon. I mean, David and the entire Hermes team, and
yeah,
then
and Brendan and Zero guys.
Brendan and the entire Bobbin and others who joined. I mean, Daniel. I mean, they were. Of course, I had
Yeah.
so much to
So,
learn
and
from
this is
them.
the time when Polygon says we're going to go in and invest $1 billion, right? I remember Sandeep
Yes.
and Mihailo saying ZK is the end game, and like there is this whole, and we kind of expected ZK to happen a lot sooner than now. I'm starting to see signs of maturity in ZK rollups, but if you go to Twitter today, then it's ZK Polygon just and Hadron obviously just to be. Is fully sponsored by Polygon, so I have to be nice. But the bets debatably didn't really work out, right? I think it was a bit too early. ZK didn't really mature as much, and if you look at optimistic rollups, they got a lot more traction as of today, right? I mean, long term we don't know, but ZK EVM has just been sunsetted. The ZKVM, the first Hermes rollup has just been sunsetted. So sometimes you got all the right ideas, and and you're kind of doing it right, but you're just early. How was that experience?
I kind of disagree with this, right? I mean, as a market, you are correct that the general optimistic rollups have won. And just to be very, very clear, I cannot take sides on
You
ZK
can
and optimistic
now you
rollups.
can't anymore, but yes. And now
Yes.
there is this
No,
optimistic rollups are also looking very closely at ZK proofs with general purpose ZK VMs, right? So I mean, optimism.
absolutely, absolutely.
So we're kind of getting to ZK anyway, but this was like 3 years too early, right? I mean, like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I would go on to say, like, if you look at the work that has happened in those 3-4 years,
yeah.
it is unprecedented at the scale of improvement that we have seen.
It's like I think every Starknet, ZK Sync, Polygon, and Rest Zero, Succinct, and whoever else kind of speeded up the pace of ZK development by at least 5 years, if not 10 years. At least that's my view, right? Because when I was looking at
Absolutely, absolutely.
Starknet pitch in consensus in 2018, I was like, this shit is at least 10 years away, and now if not 15 or 20, and now we are here, and stuff just works. But still, right, when you have sometimes the right technology, and this has happened in AI too, but you're either too early, or the
No,
market kind of
so I
doesn't.
think the shape has changed. I think the shape has changed. I will try to explain a bit why, right? Because again, this is a touchy topic in terms of ZK, whether it is making the impact or not. I would go on to say, like, we were trying to create custom ZK technology for rollups.
Mhm.
And
For
while
EVM.
doing that,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
EVM, right? For EVM, like, how do I prove EVM?
Execution
And
proofs. Yep.
while doing that, although we missed, probably by your observation, if I
By
go
my
just by your
definition, which
observation,
involves metrics and token price, right? So yeah, the VC gap.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we see that. Even if we look at that,
Yeah,
if you miss the EVM arrow, we actually gained a full RISC-V compatible arrow, which
that's true.
is far more valuable even as a VC.
And
So
also, I mean, you were able to do KZG polynomial commitments, which is very unique
yes,
to the to Avail DA, right?
yes. So if you like, I remember, I think even talking to Dankrad, I think in 2022 or 3, I don't remember. But
Mhm.
even back at that point in time, KZG was one of the major bottlenecks for the beacon chain EIP 4844
Why is it so
API.
hard?
Right.
Why is
So
it not to get too technical and bore people, but why is it
I
so hard?
think I think there are a lot of pairings involved I mean, not a lot, but
Pairing
basically
is
pairing
yeah,
checks and pairing operations are costly inside any architecture right now, and especially when you want to verify them inside ZK and such. I mean, it's a funny thing, right? That you would expect them to be cheaper than hash functions, but
yeah,
today general purpose hash functions are so much optimized
right,
via
right.
the precompiles and such
Research,
that
yeah. It's been 20, 30 years of very advanced research in hash functions, whereas some of these polynomial commitment implementation is relatively newer compared to hash functions.
relatively newer. Plus,
Yeah,
plus hash functions being more ubiquitous, like people have spent more time in optimizing them inside ZKVMs,
it's
right?
also
So,
industrial applications, right? So that's what we are
absolutely.
seeing with LLMs also, right? I mean, like these specific classes of encoder and encoder decoder models that we see in large language models are getting optimized and scaled very quickly because that's where the industry's attention is. We see that in telecoms also, right? Where it's like certain coding schemes and because Huawei adopted them are suddenly very popular. And if you ask the academics, they're like, bro, so it's not that big a deal. And so sometimes the commercial applications kind of influence the direction of technology, and
I, I
what
would
gets
say
done
almost always.
almost always.
Almost always. Almost always the best tech doesn't win. Like it's the most
No,
adopted
earlier I'm
tech which
supposed to say hyperliquid, right? It's like four validators, and that's the meme on Twitter, as in get users and get adoption, and suddenly you start to move things. Right. Sorry.
no, absolutely. I mean, see, let's like there are two classes of thoughts. Like one is former academics like me who come and sit and have their own preamble, right? And
Right.
we have to go by the book that decentralization is supreme, privacy is a fundamental right, and censorship resistance is my birthright, and
Yeah.
so on. Like I can make them up all
Yeah.
day, and
Yeah.
of course I believe in some of them,
Yeah.
and I'm guilty of that. But
This
at
is
the end of the day, if users use applications, I mean, then that is supreme.
this is
You have
actually,
to.
yeah, let me just sorry to I mean, let me just add some observations, right? So if you look at Solana, they kind of changed the culture of the space, right? They were doing meme, they still have meme coin trading. If you ask the purists, I speak to some of the researchers, founders in the space apart from yourself, and
Don't
they
name
really
them.
don't like, huh?
Don't name them, please.
Okay. No, no professor constructs anyways. So yeah, so they really don't like the engineering led, okay, we have to build the best meme coin trading system in the world, and then we will the optimize for decentralized Nasdaq type of culture, whereas Ethereum has a culture of solving the big global long term problem. And sometimes Justin Drake comes out and says we're going to do beam chain and we'll do piling for 2 years, and then whereas now we see more and more that it's product first, right? So hyperliquid, okay, we'll just push out four validators. Base is just one sequencer. Mega ETH, one big box, and then there is a lot of sophistication to it. So we're seeing, and obviously Solana, right? So we're seeing that as a, and when you don't have users, right, then all you have is research. I mean, you're solving problems, unsolved problems, and then you start to see adoption, even if it's like stupid applications like gaming on the internet or porn or whatever, or meme coin trading, and then suddenly people start to build differently. And Polygon Pass is another example, right? People used to complain about reorgs. I mean, I think that sometimes they still do, and people used to complain about the bridge because it was the most secure bridge, right? And so there is a lot of these trade-offs that you make in engineering that researchers don't have to make. So how has that influenced your journey as a builder, as in okay, so but I think we have to get to the point where you what made so you when did you start to focus full time on the data availability sampling, the the horizontal scalability problem?
No, I think we spun off Avail from Polygon in 2023, and then like that's when I fully focused on this one. I mean, even before that, I was probably 70-80% time was spent on this.
Why spin
But
it off?
I
Why
would
spin it off? Why spin off?
So I will answer that
Yeah, yeah,
by answering your last question as well. Like what you just was mentioning, right? That how do you see this change? This change is primarily that you don't want to make choices for the end product and the end user. If you are building technology, you are not making choices on behalf of others, and you let them make independent choices irrespective of what your beliefs are.
yeah.
I think that is what rollups enable. And
Mhm.
when you see that rollups, every rollup is making a different sovereign choice,
Very
and
true.
that is why it is so beneficial. An Arbitrum has very different choices than an OP stack.
For sure.
An OP stack optimism chain has a different choice than a base, and
Yep.
a mega ETH has a very different proposition
Yep.
out there, right?
Yep.
So each one of them, I am not here to debate whether which one of them are correct or not.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
even in the Web2 space, even if there is an application which five people use, that might be correct for those five
Yeah.
people. I'm not here to judge
That's
whether
right.
500 people
Those
using
five
something is
users
better
might
than.
be Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citigroup, and then
Exactly.
there you go. Right. Or
Exactly.
Starbucks. Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so that's why it is not important for me to make choices for them, and that is what also was one of the reasons why we spun off from Polygon, is that by being within Polygon you always get judged as if from within the Polygon family, and it could only serve the Polygon rollups or
That's right.
Polygon
It kind
clients.
of skews your decision making and your engineering
Exactly.
trade-offs you
Exactly.
make.
And I
Right.
remember I
And
remember
they're not
distinctly talking to Yeah, I remember distinctly talking to a few different so-called Polygon competitors, right, back at that point in
yeah,
time, and
yeah.
they were clear that we will not work with you, even if we need a DA, or even if we need some more scaling solution. We will not go with you because you are from Polygon, right? So it completely made sense for us to create a credibly
Like, why would
neutral.
ZK Singh go with Polygon's DA if they're fighting on Twitter, which was the case at the time because there was this major ZK EVM war going on. Right, right, right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that benefited us, right? I mean, by not being associated in any terms with Polygon, it actually, I mean, I think 3 out of 10 chains today which are live on Avail are actually zk sync ones, right?
That's
And
right.
and you could see like the variety of rollups that we could support, and we didn't have to think about their allegiances and their
Right. So
economic
now it's
incentives.
so you decided that this has to be a fully independent project, right? Absolutely no
Absolutely,
influence from like Polygon in
absolutely,
any sort of decision making, technical or non-technical, so that you can be this credibly neutral, layer for to serve all the app chains, whichever technology or non-functional choices they make. That makes sense. Right,
absolutely,
right. So
absolutely.
did you when you guys spun off, were you a co-founder at that time?
Yeah, I think like I was approached by Anurag, like that this is how he's thinking, and whether this would make sense, and then yeah, I mean I gladly joined
Okay.
as a
Did you
co-founder.
know what you were getting into?
No,
Going
no, not at
from
all, not at all.
going
I
from
think
a very nice life as a researcher to to a
no,
co.
I mean, I keep joking about that to my peers here, right? That this journey like has been very different than what I anticipated, right? I mean,
Right.
it
So tell
has
us
so
more about
much
it. Now we
learning.
come to the best part of the conversation. Right.
No, I think like there are many facets. Like I think being in the technology space, IC team lead or whatever role, that doesn't matter. But unless you see it from the center of the entire activity, you don't get to see the variety of things that you have to juggle
Mhm.
just to make things tick. I'm
Mhm.
not saying to make it shine, right? Just to make things just drag
Right,
along.
right.
Yeah, just work. Like there are so many different moving parts, and just the variety and the different cultures and the different types of organizational capabilities and the structures that you have to maintain in different verticals. They were such a learning for me. And I mean, every day I keep on questioning that, why I didn't train myself more in various other fields which right now become so much relevant, right? I mean,
How old are you?
yeah,
How old are you?
I am 31 right
Oh,
now.
okay. So I mean, you got probably 30 more years to go to train yourself. So
I don't think I will live that long because I work with you guys, but uh,
crypto can definitely get to you. Yes. Right. So what sort of things have you had to learn going from research into engineering into, well, as a co-founder? I mean, you have all kinds of responsibility, and it's for things you don't necessarily have done before. So
yeah,
so, so
I think I will say the biggest learning for me is that it's so easy to complain, it's so hard to fix, right? I
yeah,
mean, I can give an opinion about a football player,
yeah.
like I mean, Cole Palmer
You
is
should have done
doing
this.
this
Yeah.
miss, yeah, or Sachin Tendulkar did good
Ronaldo
shot,
should have. Sachin
right?
should have played the shot.
Ronaldo, yeah,
Yeah, that's
something
what I
again.
do. So that's my job on Twitter as a
Well,
opinion.
and to be honest, like in on Twitter, that is what is also kind of thought after, right? That people want to listen to your opinions, right?
That's right.
They are
So
like,
your
you
opinion.
cannot you cannot write on Twitter
Yeah.
how you are fixing it. Yeah,
No.
people don't care, right?
It's
But
complicated. Right.
yeah, I think my main learning was that it is so easy to criticize, it's so hard to fix. And by saying hard to fix, I'm not saying that I am fixing 100 problems. I'm not. Really, really, I'm not. But just finding the right people to fix it, just getting the right person to hire. I mean, like every day is a new challenge. Like for example, 6 months back we had 5 different roles which we wanted to fill up, and we knew the perfect kind of personalities of people that we wanted to hire. When we reached out to XYZ, they were like, no, we are settled, right? And
Mhm.
then last month, similar people just opened up, they were switching and so on, they wanted to join us and so on, and we were like, no, we cannot hire anymore because we have
Right. We
either
don't have
filled
the
up
role
them.
fulfilled, yeah. Or the direction
Exactly.
changed or so many other things. That's right. 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 So
Exactly,
people.
and so it's feels limiting. Like although you think that like some people come to me and say like, oh, who is questioning your decision? Like you can do whatever in Avail and all that, but you cannot. It's
No,
so it's
your
so
team is questioning your decisions. Your community is questioning your decisions. The Twitter is questioning your
absolutely,
decisions. People have absolutely no
absolutely
stake at questioning, and obviously investors and everyone else and people who know you. I mean, maybe even your family, if they find out.
every day.
Right. Right. So now you have to look after a whole bunch of things, right? There is not just research, I mean, or engineering. It's also product marketing, BD. There is budgets. There is tokenomics. There is a whole bunch of stuff. So how do you kind of adapt to this continuous intensity and chaos?
I think, I mean, two things I would say. Like one is that the moment you like, there are maybe 10 different things, and the moment you do not focus on one, that thing starts lagging off. So it's a perpetual cycle, right? It is not like you can leave something. You have to deprioritize and then reprioritize and then and so on. So it's a continuous prioritization game that you have to keep on playing. I think
Mhm.
that's one. But the second, also, I feel like founders get too much credits. Like, I mean, I was about to tweet something around this. Maybe I will in 1 or 2 days. Is that you know I know that like founders sometimes do a lot of different jugglings and such, but there are fantastic people in all good organizations who are the actual people who are making things work.
Right.
Founders
Right.
are just the face, the credit takers and such, right? I mean,
I don't see it that way,
famous
but I'll take your word for it. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
That,
mean, yeah, there is. I would say at least from Avail side, there are absolutely fantastic people working within Avail who is making it what it is. Um, there are of course many things that I tend to look into, but there is not a single one of them where I can individually pull it off.
that's
So
fair.
so I think
That's
there
fair.
is it's a lot of team
I think
play which goes on.
so. One big change, I guess, is that now you are making decisions, right? So you have to make a lot of different types of decisions and in imperfect information. So I mean, and it's not
It's very
necessary,
hard.
not
It's
necessarily
very
the
hard.
what you're trained to do. So like, I mean, might be BD, marketing, budgets, whatever else. So how do you kind of manage that, and how do you cope with that? Because if you're going to do make decisions in areas that are not, even the experts make mistakes, right? So how do you cope with that pressure and the uncertainty and everything?
I think you are absolutely right. That making the like basically pulling the trigger is the hardest part, right? Like it is essentially because you do not know the consequences, you do not understand the decisions that
Right.
you are making completely, and at
Yeah.
the same time, all the consequences are yours to own up, right? So that's why I mean it is a bit hard, but as I said, like having the right folks to advise you to share knowledge, to able to pick up things like you know you try to ask and probe around and see what kind of rationale that they are making. And if essentially if you have a very rational kind of team, it helps.
That's right.
Emotionally, taking decisions are easier. Rationally it's harder,
Yeah.
but rationally you always knew the rationale against which you pull the trigger, so the consequences become much less
At least
troubling
you
for you
know
because
what risks you were taking and what trade-offs you were making, and what how bad it can get or how good it can get when you so yeah, Steve Jobs used to do this, pros and cons famously. When I think the Pixar guys pitched to him, it's very well documented. So that's kind of your approach. You look at it logically and
Yeah, but
yourself, right?
still you get a lot of slack. Like I mean, I think one of the major things is that you cannot live up to any particular process. Like I mean, every day you kind of adapt your process. You do not give way, but at the same time you cannot be a stubborn person who always follow processes,
Yeah, yeah.
because
So
that is not what startups allow you to do. Startups
right,
always are very ruthless.
yeah,
So if you are the bottleneck, you continue to hinder everyone else. So you
uh,
have to be not the bottleneck while standing up to your own processes and principles.
that's right. That's right. So you're debottlenecking and helping your team move forward and get shit done. That's kind of a key to the role. I think that's a great insight, right? Because there is always bottlenecks, and because of the environment, because of the team organization process, there is also constraints, right? There is
And things change,
environment
right? Because we
all
are in this
the
crypto
time.
market. Like yeah, like you took a decision. Like you know uh, existing people, they come in. I mean, especially like for example, we keep a finance person, we hire a finance person from a non-blockchain world. They want to
Right.
know a yearly focus areas and their budgets and
Give us
such.
a 12-month
And it
forward or 24-month forward budget, just like I used to have at Barclays. Okay, fine.
Yes,
Good luck
exactly,
with that.
exactly.
Right.
And it's very hard for us to explain to them that we do not have that level of foresight. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not because maybe a bit because we are so bad at it, but also because the industry doesn't allow us.
Yeah, Mark Andreessen talks about how startups are like building a ship while you're also sailing it. So you're kind of sailing the
Yeah.
ship, but you're also building it as you go along, and obviously it's a pretty demanding process emotionally and otherwise. So what's your how do you cope with this? I mean, do you have a process? Like, are you a spiritual person? I mean, where do you kind of manage the stress? How do you find your space to sleep? What's your personal technology for staying sane in the middle of this madness, of this
I think
crypto startup madness?
the different things, right? I mean, there is not really a good process that I have, to be honest. Of course, some people are spiritual; they find solace in that. I am not that spiritual of a person. I think it is two things. One is either you focus on something else, like completely separate from what your work is. Like, for example, you play a game, you play, I play sometimes on PlayStation and such, but also like say badminton or something, some
Yeah,
sport, some
friends
physical
and
sport.
family and yeah. Okay.
Yes, you completely drain yourself because sports is one of those things where you can get physically and emotionally drained so much that you cannot think about anything else, right?
It
So
also cleans
I
up
think
your emotions and toxins,
yes,
whatever else, and gives you oxygen and
yes.
clarity. So what's your sport? Is it football or
I think I watch a lot of football.
okay?
Playing football I used to, but now I think I play a bit more badminton because you need
Okay.
11 players, and
Less
I do not
okay.
have
That's good.
11.
That's good for Avail community because it's a lot less risky, and you're not gonna probably injure your fingers, and generally you can't work anymore. We need your hands. So okay.
Yeah,
So
that's one, but also I think there are other ways in which people decompress. And for example, sometimes shut down all the notifications and read a paper or read a blog post or read something because like my sometimes my insecurities play up, which is that I'm so involved in the day to day that I am not honing my skills, which is looking forward to seeing what other people are building or
So it
what
started
new
like
research
even
is
in
happening.
life, right? As a co-founder, I mean, there's no
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
distinction, and if your life and your work are the same, then it's very easy to lose perspective about
Yeah.
life at large. Because on one
Yeah.
hand, this is everything, but on the other hand, there's more to life. And
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I see. And if you kind of bring that perspective back, then it kind of gives you that
Yes.
centeredness or sanity. I like that real. I think that's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
like overall, like I have faced this many many times, which is that you think that the decision is so alarming that you need to take it in the 24 hours or 48 hours or 7 days or whatever. Like in the short term, things look very very important, but if you look back and you see the plethora of decisions that you made in short term time spans,
Yeah.
they ultimately do not impact very highly, or some of them impact
Unfortunately,
disproportionately high. Yeah,
unfortunately, right? And you don't know at the time, right? Because
you
as
don't
a
know it.
startup, you're kind of acting in under extreme uncertainty. That's kind of another one of those Mark Andreessen quotes and Steve Blank's frameworks and so on. And none of those frameworks, right? So as Hadron, one of the things I learned is that you can give advice. Advice is free, and it's usually not very useful. But when you kind of have to do it, right? It's like, oh, this is how you should swim, and then you jump into the pool, and none of that advice comes in handy. You kind of have to learn to swim yourself, and it's the same as riding a bike. Okay, okay. So now, you had a successful fundraise, had product launches, you've had a whole bunch of partnerships announcements, the team kind of has grown. So what did you learn from the Polygon experience that or that you think has been particularly handy for you as a co-founder? And what have you
I
learned
think
from the Avail experience so far that you think other founders can benefit from?
like of course a lot I've learned from Polygon days and then at Avail as well. I think as I was mentioning, one thing is at scale problems are very different than what theoretical papers and POCs can find out.
Hmm.
The other thing is when you have a changing meta, to stay relevant across changing metas is extremely hard. At the
Yeah.
same time, if you keep on pivoting at
Yeah.
every meta change, also you're irrelevant, right? So
Right. And no matter
so
what you stand for, and positioning becomes very challenging. And I've seen that with in multiple. Yeah, that's a thing that a lot of founders struggle with, right? I mean, how do you kind of maintain relevance and top of mind share, but also kind of keep a clear and consistent positioning message for who you are? And do you take that different slant, or do you keep going straight? And if you keep going straight, you might get ignored. And but if you rotate like a gimbal, then no one knows what your positioning is. Okay, yeah, that's a really hard
yeah,
challenge, especially in crypto, because there's no like discounted cash flows going around, and it's very sensitive to metas. And one day Ethereum is dead, the other day Ethereum is king of the jungle, and that applies to everyone, and even more so to new projects, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I would say, like, that we need to, like, every founder needs to be very convinced about their own thesis. Like, they need to be very strong about, that they believe in what they are building, and
Yeah,
at the same time sometimes zoom
yeah,
out to see, yes, although I believe in the product that I'm building, what is the product that people need, and can I make something that people also might need. It might not be, in the next 3 months, like, so that's why it's, I sometimes keep on saying, like, I think Anurag has this fantastic ability to, to kind of anticipate metas, right? Rather than just thinking about what is the meta right now, he has
yeah.
the ability to sometimes anticipate it, and I think that is one of the crucial, skills to learn, and
Being
and
opinionated, right? Being opinionated, like I mean, Solana is a great example, right? Anatoly has been about
absolutely,
fast and cheap for 6 years, and he just went at it, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's been an incredible journey. I mean, going
absolutely.
from zero to scammer to 260 and then back to, yeah, it's just incredible how he has stayed the
Again,
course.
it doesn't matter. Like, as I was mentioning, you mentioned about the Polygon people getting hit. It's the
Yeah,
same, like, you look at Anatoly, how much hate did Solana get and
yeah,
Anatoly get,
yeah.
throughout his time. I mean, and hats off. And this is not
Yeah, I have
just
a huge
him,
amount
right?
of
Like,
admiration for Toli, for sure. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and the same for any, and that's why I keep
And
saying, like,
yeah,
if you're a
Vitalik,
builder in the space, yeah, if you're even a small, small team builders building a very small product, it doesn't matter. Like, you will get a lot
you're
of
gonna
hate,
get
and yeah, if you are convinced about your product, great. Like, that you are already better off than 90%, because 90% don't build anything and they just come and chill on you, right? So
99 probably.
so
I think it's actually worse than 90. It's very,
yeah,
people don't really have a conviction. They're building a club because right now,
yeah,
last week, club is hot, and then they're doing AI agent because AI agents are hot 3 months ago. They're doing
exactly.
right at the and I see both things. Like, I know some protocols which kind of just stayed and built kept building, like, I have to be careful not to name anyone, especially close friends, but like, oh, we're going to continue to do this, and then yeah, I'm a good example. I'll take my own example, right? So we were doing all this RWA enterprise, private blockchain permission. I was doing that for 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and it hasn't worked out. So, right, and now we are seeing the same sort of ideas come through, and there is a timing issue, there is a path dependence issue, right? I think how you get there is a regulatory environment which has suddenly changed, right? So with Trump's election, so such a massive field of uncertainty that you can go wrong in two ways, right? You could be too opinionated, and you can be insufficiently opinionated. If you're not opinionated, you don't stand for anything, no one knows what you stand for. And if you're extremely, you're a little bit too opinionated, you can risk being at the wrong time or becoming irrelevant, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so is there a formula for any of this?
I mean, if there was a formula, then I think we would have seen the
I would have
success rate of startups, yeah,
yeah,
going from 2%, 5%, a single digit to 99%. If there was a formula, and then there would have been no meta of building a startup. Like, there would have been no thing for enterprise, and so on.
that's right.
So of course there is no formula, and that is what the formula is, right? That
Right.
you can get disproportionately high, return on your conviction,
Yeah.
because there is no formula,
Okay.
and that is what everyone is betting for, right? Like, you are betting on your time, on your effort, and maybe on your money as well,
Right.
that how right you will be in a time horizon, right?
Yeah.
and
There's
and
an
you never
opportunity.
know, as you
Right.
mentioned.
You're betting 5, 6, 10 best years of your life on a thesis, right? So I mean, yeah. So the formula is that there is no formula. I think that's the title of this show, right? And that's where the big opportunity for founders is, that because there's no formula, so you kind of have to do it. You can't. Okay, this puts all the advisors out of a job, which is really bad for me. But yeah, let's
No,
do
I
it.
think I
Right.
think one thing is, like, I think there is one quote I don't remember from whom, but magic happens around the edges, right? So it's almost always that when you see at the confluence of two different worlds is when a lot of magic happens, and that's where a lot of opportunity arises.
Right.
Maybe because of information asymmetry, maybe
Mhm.
because it has not been looked into, maybe because it is new. Like how what is the probability that I will be able to come up with a fundamental mathematical formula, like something like Fermat's
Fermat's
formula or
theorem.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the probability that I will actually go and build, like research something around that versus something in blockchain, because blockchain is so
Yeah,
much new?
you're always
It's just
making those
because it is
bets,
new.
right? Yeah, you're always making
Yes.
bets anyway. I mean, and then for founders, it's even harder because you're making very big bets on your time, your life, and and opportunity costs and so on and so forth. So okay, so what's your vision, Prabal? As in 5 years, where are you? Where is your company? What have you achieved? If through where do you want to
I
be
think
this time?
in 5 years, the main thing I would want to say is that normal people will use blockchain without knowing that they are using blockchain.
Hmm.
That is, I think, one of the main goals that I have, at least for this industry and Avail, of course, specifically.
Right.
um, the problem, I mean, I know that in the short term it doesn't work out, right? Because of course people need to know that what they are working on, the speculative angle of all of this doesn't work out if it is too abstract, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a five-year horizon, and you can already see it, like, I mean, why is RWA such a big thing right now?
Yeah.
Not because the normal person is excited about blockchains, it's because that they are now have the ability to use blockchain as a primitive, get its distribution while having the same asset classes which they believe in, right?
That's right.
So it's again a confluence of two worlds where you
True.
see a lot of these things happening.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like we have tried to make blockchains kind of like an isolated world, an
Yeah.
island which is absolutely amazing. It's a new country which has all the social security and the flora and fauna and the all the good things, no war, like whatever.
It's
Yeah,
permissionless. There
but
is no need for a law. Or, yeah. Okay. Fine.
exactly, right.
Right.
But
Right.
but actually what people need is like existing worlds need blockchain primitives.
That's right.
They have, like what I started with, right? Like how do you do fair exchange of value?
Yeah.
If blockchain can help there, they still need fair exchange. They can just use blockchain as a primitive. They don't need to learn blockchain. They don't need to tokenize everything. They don't need to like, knowingly
It's like AI
check out
too,
an
right?
RPC.
It's the same with AI or phones or anything else. I mean, you use apps, right?
Yes,
You don't need to know how
exactly,
a computer was put together, right?
exactly,
And initially, obviously, when the PC revolution was happening, there was homebrew computer club, and people assembled their own machines for a long time, right? And they were trying different things, and now it's so you go from the this enthusiast world of okay, I'm very deep in zk or whatever else, to okay, just give me the app, right? And most people,
exactly.
8 billion people should be just using the apps, and we kind of have to deliver those apps. So, okay, that's
And
a
the same,
strategy.
down the line as well. Like for example, if you were a game developer in 2000, you had to think about the driver in which your controller will be set up, and
CDM,
that was
smart
also part of
contract,
your proposal.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But
Yeah.
right now, if you are building a game, you do not need to think about how exactly the camera functions on the phone, right?
No,
You
it's getting
just
even more funny now.
you,
You just ask Cursor to do or Replit to do some vibe coding, and you kind of get a
exactly,
prototype game. It's getting even more interesting. And I see
exactly.
that Avail has been doing some vibe coding stuff. So what's going on with that?
I think our team internally is heavily filled with all the AI tools that are coming up,
Uh-huh.
and we just love to do them in groups and just live stream it. We have
Uh-huh.
been able to, I think yesterday we had seen, even with the outages and everything, I think we couldn't end our StreamYard link. That's what the outage caused us, but I think we saw a record number of people watching it and so on, right? So it
That's pretty
was basically an AI NFT generator tool that we were just vibe coding, and it's like it lets you, the ability to build things without knowing all the technical details, exactly what we were talking about a while back.
Mhm.
That is why it is so
Right.
impactful.
So we're taking
And
not this meta, not just to using, but also building, right? Now,
absolutely.
from anyone can use to anyone can build, right?
Exactly. Like if you have, like, how many times have you used a product and thought like, oh, if only it had this feature? Like how many times have you thought like, why is this bug happening? Like can't they add just a single button here? Like
Yeah.
these kind of things. And
Amazing.
it was so limiting for us to, even if it's an open source, you
Yeah.
couldn't pull a PR, right? I mean, it
Uh,
is impossible for a normie to just go and do that.
right.
But it is becoming increasingly possible,
That's
and
right.
that ability to to do things as per your wish is why programming is so,
Yeah.
so lucrative, right?
Oh
Why
God.
mathematics is so lucrative, or why any field of study is so lucrative, because you can imagine and then you can build, either
Yeah, I'm
write it
very, very
down or
happy. I used to be a programmer when programming used to pay, right? And I don't know what will happen going forward. And I'm very happy not to be a programmer at this time, but I hear both sides of that. So what's Avail's long term vision? So this is your chance to shill, as in, it's what is Avail's long term vision? What is Avail going to be?
I think Avail is going to be the end-to-end horizontally scalable blockchain stack.
What does that mean?
What
I
do I
mean,
mean?
what
What
does
does
that mean?
that mean? Yeah, so essentially, if you think about how general blockchains work today, is that you have to think about what the blockchain is, how will it scale, how will it talk to other blockchains, how will it gain security, how will the first user come in, how will the first lending protocol come in, borrowing protocol come in, Oracle come in, what is the indexer, what is the RPC, who is going to do this,
Am I
like,
using I have 15 wallets on my? Yeah, it's a mess, right?
exactly. Exactly, right? It's a mess. And we don't want to offer that in the future, right? In the future, we want, one end-to-end application stack where you
Right.
don't have to think about what the underlying technology is, how it
Am
will
I on
scale, how it will be
optimism? Am
efficient.
I on base? Am I on arbitrum? Am I on hyperliquid? I have to worry about too much, right? I have to worry about wallets.
You don't, yes.
Right, right, right.
As a user, you won't have to worry about which chain you are connecting to, which
Okay.
wallet is it supported,
Yeah.
where the funds are, and that we are going to launch very very soon. I think private beta is out next week.
Wow. Okay.
Is essentially how a user doesn't have to care about, where their funds reside. They just have to care about what application and how they want to interact
Right,
with it.
right. Yeah.
So that is coming up very very soon. Private beta next week, and then I think each CC is when the
That's that's
hackathon and
that's
hackfest
news to
there.
even me, right? So I work on the Whale team, by the way, full disclosure. So I thought it was a bit later. So wow, thanks for the alpha leak. I'm supposed to know about this, anyways, and you might ask me that answer. Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's happening during the next 1 month or so, and
Okay.
then on the horizontal scalable part, like, about abstracting blockchains end to end, we have already shown demos with partners in major, forums like Finternet and others. We are also in talk with various different partners into enabling this, um,
Fascinating.
in collaboration with them. And
Right.
then, in terms of, shared security, we have our Fusion, as part of our roadmap. That white paper is going to come up again in the
This is
next
the this
one
is
one
the
and a half
game
months.
theory. This is the game theorist in you, right? Which is how do we align the incentives of roll-ups with the
Yes,
settlement layer and the DA layers, and that's kind of, so there
yes,
are two big problems Ethereum has been solving, right? So it sounds like you're kind of solving the challenges that Ethereum has been looking to solve, which is, you kind of have to users have to go between chains through bridges and all that stuff. You kind of have to know a lot about the application before you use it. You have to switch RPCs, whatnot, and then also, there is this continuous debate with Kyle Samani saying, roll-ups are parasitic, or then Ethereum guys like me coming along and saying, no, 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 wait, 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 without base, people wouldn't be using Ethereum. So there is this continuous debate, but we know that there is still a challenge there. So you're solving those two big ones, and then for a user, what does that mean if I'm
yeah.
not?
For the user, it would mean very simple things, which is that when you open Facebook or Instagram, you don't think about which server is, giving it to you, what extension you need to use, etc.,
Right.
etc., etc. Right. So, as an Instagram user, you just download the app and you get it working. You
Right,
don't
and you
think
don't
like
know
whether
where
it's
the
a Twitter
cloud
URL.
things are in the cloud, and whether it's
Exactly.
Linux or Windows or right. Okay.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, right. So
And
as a user, that is the experience, that your relationship, a user's relationship is only with the application.
right. If there is
And
more demand, you just spin up one more bar, and
exactly,
it happens transparently, and you kind of get this elastic, right, effect.
exactly, on Amazon, if it is, Black Friday sale, Amazon takes care of its demand and
That's
how
right.
it will scale. A
Right.
user doesn't need to, worry about,
You
oh, should
don't
I
need
self
one
post my
more
Amazon.
box. That's right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't have to call Amazon. Thank God. That's right. Wow. Okay. So there is if you succeed, then there is not going to be a Web 3 and a Web 2. Looks like there is probably just going to be the internet.
Yeah, I mean, nobody talks about HTTP protocol anymore, right? I mean, it's HTTPS everywhere, and using HTTP is an aberration, right? Today, so internet evolves, and this also will evolve. Internet is right now a web of information. It will be a web of value, and information is value today, but money has its own value. And when two things combine and collide, is
Yeah.
when again a lot of new applications and new use cases are going to come in. And I mean, again, 5 years down the line, as you asked me, there will be no Web 3, Web 2, and all that. It will be a
Amazing.
one web. A lot of these applications, what we are seeing today, are also still going to reign supreme. We are seeing Polymarket and X,
Yeah.
and all these kind of Stripe,
Yeah. Now
and
we are seeing Stripe by Privy, and
yes,
right, there is this,
yes.
and then
So
stable coin Meta Walmart talking about launching its stable coin. So we're kind of seeing that. Wow. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely, right. So as a Stripe user, I'm not going to think about what Privy Wallet is, right? So
Yeah.
it is not going to look like that. As a PayPal
Right.
user, I'm not going to think about PayPal USD or whatever, right? So
I love it.
they're all going to be taken care of by these abstractions,
Yeah.
and soon we will just think about the value flow rather than which is the provider, which is the chain, what is the
Brilliant.
XYZ.
Great. So, Prabal, thank you so much for being generous with your time. I think this is a fantastic story, especially with your vision and where all this is going. But we would love to host you at Hadron, because you've gone from your the journey, and you're still going through it, right? You're just sort of just getting started, as the meme goes. So yeah, would love for you to come talk to the Hadron founders and share your stories and your learning more intimately. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with our listeners today. Appreciate your time. Hope to host you again in the future. All the best.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Hope I'm not edited out almost entirely. Thank you.
No. I get to make all the controversial remarks, not you. So, all right. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thanks a lot.